I forgot to start recording. So here, this is what I mean. Accounting errors under the suspense account. That is actually what we are discussing today. So I've said this. The work of an accountant is actually to record transactions in the ledger account, to balance them, and to extract the trial balance, among other duties the accountant is supposed to do. When these ledgers are being balanced or prepared, errors might happen. The errors might happen. These errors are actually going to cause either the trial balance to continue balancing, even if it is going to balance with a different figure, or the trial balance will fail to balance. Remember, the ledger accounts are normally prepared either at the end of the month, or in small organization, the ledgers can be balanced at the end of the year. And in this big organization, you'll find that for 1 month only, you are going to have very many ledger accounts to record all those transactions that occurred in that particular month. Because these accounts are so many, and the moment you have extracted your trial balance and you find that the trial balance did not balance, it is going to be very, very hard for you to locate the ledger account where you made the mistake that is causing your trial balance not to balance. Anytime you find that your trial balance did not balance, the difference between the two sides is normally recorded in an account called the suspense account. So a suspense account, it is a temporary account where error or an amount of error, because actually if the trial balance did not balance, it simply means that one of the side had higher amount. Either the debit side had higher than the credit, or the credit had higher than the debit. The side that has got less amount, that side is normally indicated, or that less amount is normally indicated as a suspense. Like for example, the debit had 100,000, the credit had 80,000. Because the credit side has got less by 20, we normally write here suspense account, and there we put the 20,000, which is actually the difference between 180, so that our trial balance can balance. And then thereafter, now investigation will start as to why the trial balance failed to balance. So errors are actually cases that arise as a result of poor ledger accounts preparation. So having noted that, then we can move to the types of errors. Basically, the errors are normally categorized into two types. We have got those errors which do not affect the trial balance. These errors, they simply mean that the accountant will commit those errors, but the trial balance will still balance. The trial balance will comfortably balance, but not here. Yes, it will balance, but it will balance with a wrong amount. And we have got those errors. Once they have been committed, the trial balance will never balance. The trial balance will never balance. One of the sides is going to have a higher amount than the other. Then we can now go to these errors, errors which do not affect the trial balance. And as I've said, these are the errors that the accountant might commit, but the trial balance will not fail to balance. These errors, they are, number one, we have got what we call an error of omission. An error of omission, it arises where a transaction is completely omitted. A transaction is completely omitted from the ledger accounts. If, for example, there was a transaction that occurred on the date 12, maybe sold the goods by cash 10,000. When the accountant was preparing the ledger accounts, on reaching on that date 12, he never saw that particular transaction, and he skipped that transaction and went to the next transaction. So this transaction that occurred on the date 12, as an example, is completely omitted. So there is no account was debited, and there was no account that was credited using the amount for that particular transaction. That means that because we know the double entry concept says that for every debit entry, there must be a corresponding credit entry, it simply means that there was no debit entry that was entered, and there was no credit entry that was entered using the amount for that transaction. And as we know, the trial balance normally balances because the amount of money that was indicated on the debit side of the accounts and on the credit side of the accounts, they are equal. That's why the trial balances balance. But in this case, because we did not enter that amount on the debit and we did not enter on the credit, so it's like they cancel out and then the trial balance will balance, but with a lesser amount. If the transaction was worth maybe 1,000 shillings, maybe sold goods by cash, 100,000, that 1,000 is missing on the debit and that 1,000 is missing on the credit. Therefore, the totals of your trial balance will balance by 1,000 less because of that particular omission. Note here, the trial balance is going to balance, but it is going to balance with the wrong balancing figure. The next category of errors that do not affect the totals of the trial balance is known as the error of principle. The error of principle occurs where you record a transaction in the wrong class of account. In the wrong class of account, but you obey the double entry concept. But you obey the double entry concept. What do I mean by the wrong class of account? The wrong class of account is like maybe you have bought furniture. You have bought furniture. We have always insisted here that what is recorded in the purchases, it is only goods that are bought. But you find that the accountant has done a mistake. The furniture was bought. Instead of it being recorded in the furniture account, the person or the accountant records it in the purchases account. Note here again, once we purchase furniture, it is supposed to be debited in the furniture account. Once we purchase goods, they are supposed to be debited on the purchases account. Remember, there is no mistake that we have done here. We have debited the purchases instead of debiting the furniture. Here, a debit entry has been entered. So when we shall be talking about the debits, a debit has been entered even though it has been entered in a wrong account. So like, for example, we purchase furniture by cash. Cash is credited by that amount, but instead of debiting the furniture, we debited the purchases. The key thing here, we debited an account, yes, but we debited a wrong account. So when we are doing the total debits, because that is what the trial balance requires, the debits will be the same as the credit because a debit was made, even though that debit was made in a wrong account. So that is what we mean by the error of principle. We recorded the transaction in the wrong class, but we observed the double entry. A debit and a credit was made. The next category of error in this case is what we call the error of commission. An error of commission, it occurs where the correct amount is entered in a wrong account, but of the same class. You record an amount which is actually correct amount in the wrong account, but of the same class. I want to explain it this way. I can sell goods to a customer by the name Jane, but in my business, I also have another customer by the name Joanne. Once I sell goods to Jane, who is actually the correct person who bought goods from my business, I should debit Jane's account because that is my debtor. But you find the accountant has confused. Instead of recording that amount in Jane account, he records it in Joanne account. So he debits or reopens the Joanne account and records that amount in the debit side of Joanne account instead of on the debit side of Jane account. These two people are of the same class because Jane and Joanne, they are our customers and therefore they are debtors. They are of the same class, but we have entered this amount in a wrong account. But the two of them are the same in terms of the customer point of it. Therefore, error of commission, it is where you record a transaction in the wrong account, personal account, but of the same class. But the error of a principle is where you record an amount in a wrong class of account, but you observe the double entry. So actually, most cases you'll find the errors of commission will arise as a result of mistaking the names of either the creditors or the debtors. Or I can give another example whereby I buy goods from maybe P minor. That is one of my suppliers. But there's another supplier by the name K minor. Instead of recording this amount in P minor, I mistake and record it in the K minor. The two are my suppliers. They are the same class. But now when it is entering in the account, in the specific account, I make a mistake. That is actually what we mean by the error of commission. So error of commission arises where there is a wrong personal account that is being entered, but those people are actually the same from the business perspective. Then we have a category of errors we call compensating errors. These are errors that cancel out each other. They are errors that cancel out each other, but they cancel out each other coincidentally without even the accountant being aware that those errors arose and they have canceled. A good example is this. If, for example, I sold goods by cash worth 1,000. I sell goods by cash. I'll stop sharing this so that I can demonstrate that. Let me share my screen. The compensating. The transaction is like this. Sold goods by cash, maybe 1,000. The key thing this is supposed to be is that we are supposed to open the cash account here and we debit by 1,000. We come here and record sales 1,000. Then we open the sales because it is always credited. We credit here by cash 1,000. That is the correct point of it. But you can find a mistake has been committed somewhere. Instead of crediting sales with 1,000, maybe the accountant missed and he omitted a 0. And he came here and recorded only, he came here and recorded only 1,000, only 100, sorry. Instead of having 1,000 here and 1,000 here, he has written 1,000 here and he has written 100 here. If this mistake goes on like that, we balance the accounts and then we extract the trial balance, that trial balance will never balance because there was a debit of 100 here and a credit of 1,000 of the same transaction. Simply means that the credit sides have got a less by 900 because we indicated 100 here instead of 1,000. But the transactions goes on, then it reaches a point whereby maybe this one occurred on maybe 10th. We go to maybe on 21st. There is another transaction like sold goods for maybe another 1,000, again cash. Now you come here and you do a mistake, but this mistake is like the opposite. Instead of having this, instead of having the sales account here 1,000, you come here and you record sales, you put 100, and then you come here, you record cash, you put 1,000. You will find that in the first transaction, we had made a mistake. We had made an error of not recording the credit side with 1,000, but instead we recorded by 100. So we had lowered the credit side by 900. But in this second transaction, we have committed another mistake whereby we have indicated 100 here instead of 1,000. But now you find that in the first case, it was the credit side that had rest. In the second, it is now the debit that has rest. So you find this rest 100 here, negative 900 here, is going to be compensated by this negative 900 here. This rest 900 and this rest 900, when we go to the trial balance will balance because those errors have compensated each other. The difference in that, and the difference in this, they have compensated each other and your trial balance will balance. So these are very rare errors that can occur in the business, but they can occur. If they occur, it is a case whereby coincidentally, an accountant commits two errors, which at the end of the day, it's like they are canceling each other. Let me continue with the slides. That is actually the case of the compensating error. Then we can move to the next, which is the error of original entry. An error of original entry is where you record a transaction both in the debit and the credit entry using the same amount, but that amount is wrong. That figure is incorrect. So again, let me stop sharing this so that I can demonstrate that. It is a case that arises like this. Like for example, you bought goods for maybe $860 by check. This is by check here. The correct thing is that we are supposed to open the purchases and we open the bank accounts like that. Purchases, we know it's always debited. So we come here and you record bank. Bank, when you are using money in the bank to pay something, it reduces. So it's supposed to be on this side. So it's supposed to come on the credit side like that. Whereas this one is always debited. So you realize instead of using 860, maybe you use 680. Yeah? You use 680. These figures are used here, both here 680, and you come here and you use 680. You have done the double entry, yes, but that double entry has got a mistake in terms of the figure that has been used. But the key important thing with the error of original entry is that the wrong figure that you put on the debit entry, it is the same wrong figure that you put on the credit entry of the other account that is being affected by that particular ledger account. So that is what we mean by the error of original entry. The figure is wrong, but that wrong figure is used in entering the debit and the credit entry of the affected ledger accounts. Then we can proceed to the next category, which is actually the error of complete reversal of entries. Complete reversal of entries. Again, I will go back to my screen. Complete reversal of entries, it arises as a result of doing the opposite in terms of the account that was supposed to be debited and the account that was supposed to be credited. I can have an example here of bought furniture worth 4,000 cash. We buy furniture worth 4,000 cash. The correct scenario should be how? Let me ask that question now. If a business buys furniture for 4,000 and pays by cash, which account is supposed to be debited and which account is supposed to be credited? Class? Somebody to try?
The cash debited.
Sorry?
Furniture account is debited.
Furniture account is going to be debited because it's actually, they are increasing, and then cash? Cash will automatically be credited because it is reducing as a result of paying for furniture. So the correct account here is supposed to be, we debit furniture, then we credit cash. In short, we are supposed to come here and open the furniture and we write on the debit cash 4K. Then we open cash and then on the credit we write here furniture 4K. That is actually the correct point of it. But An accountant can commit a mistake and does the opposite. He comes here and opens the furniture, and then instead of debiting, he credits by cash 4K, and then comes here for the cash account. Instead of crediting, he does the debit, and he writes here furniture 4K. So if these entries have been reversed, if these entries, the account that was supposed to be debited here, it has been credited, and the account which was supposed to be credited, it has been debited. If an account makes such an error, that error is known as the error of complete reversal of entries. Still, your trial balance will balance. And the reason why your trial balance will balance is because the amount which was debited is the same as the amount which was credited, even though the accounts themselves are wrongly recorded. So the trial balance will balance simply because the total debits and the total credits are going to balance, even though an error might occur in the individual ledger account. Then we have the transposition error. The transposition error, I normally find it to be very similar with the error of original entry. Remember the original entry, we said that you use a wrong amount to debit and credit the accounts that are affected. With the transposition error is actually almost the same. It is a case whereby you use a wrong sequence of digits in the amount, which is actually the same case that happens in the error of original entry. Instead of maybe having 432, you have 423. That is actually what they mean by the transposition error. In some books, you'll find that at the moment they have indicated the error of original entry, they are not going to have it, the transposition error is not going to be captured. But in other books, they have both of them. So I decided also to have both of them. So it is a case whereby you put or you use a wrong sequence of digits in the amount, but note here, the wrong sequence of digits that you use to debit is the same wrong sequence of digits that you are going to use in crediting the other account which is affected by the same account. Those are actually the errors. They are mostly tested. You will be asked, explain 5 errors which do not affect the totals of the trial balance. Those are actually the errors. The error of omission, where the transaction is completely omitted from being recorded in the books of accounts. We have the error of principle, where a transaction has been entered in the wrong class of accounts. We have the error of commission, where a transaction has been entered in the same class of accounts, but the wrong personal accounts. We have the error of original entry, where a wrong amount has been used to debit and credit the accounts affected. We have the compensating error, whereby two errors, coincidentally, they cancel out each other. And then we have got the transposition error, whereby an account or an amount has been wrongly sequenced when being entered in the books of, not forgetting the complete reversal of entry, the error of complete reversal of entry. So the other categories of errors are those errors which, when committed, the trial balance will never balance. It will fail to balance. Remember, those categories that we have discussed, the first category, the errors not affecting the totals of the trial balance. I said this, those errors, even though they are going to be committed by the accountant, still the trial balance will balance. And what makes the trial balance to continue balancing is because the mistake that was made on the debit side was the same mistake that was made on the credit side. Therefore, each side was affected and your trial balance should therefore balance. When we go to this second category of errors, you will find that the trial balance is not going to balance simply because the mistake that was committed or the error that was committed, it was affecting one side only. it was affecting one side and the other side was never affected. So one side is either being reduced or increased, whereas the other side is left the way it was supposed to be. And automatically your trial balance will never balance. And a good example is this, failure to enter a corresponding entry to every debit and credit. So instead of ensuring that every transaction has been entered in the debit side of one account and the credit side of the other account, somebody can come and enter it on one account, maybe the debit side only, and then you fail to proceed and do the same on the other account and record it on the opposite side. Like for example, if it is cash sales, whereby cash is supposed to be debited and sales is going to be credited. You just debit cash and you forget to go and credit the sales. That is actually what we mean by the single entry. Your trial balance will never balance. The other case is where you have arithmetic errors, especially when you are balancing the accounts. Instead of adding the debits and the credits correctly so that you can get the correct balance carried down, which will be the same as the balance brought down, if your balance carried down is wrong, obviously your balance brought down is going to be wrong also, which simply means that you are going to transfer a wrong amount to the trial balance and your trial balance is not going to balance. And then we also have using different amounts to debit and credit. We have talked about the compensating error, whereby an error that was committed on the debit side is the same or it is compensated by a similar error that is done on the credit side. If there is no compensation, if you do an error which is never compensated, that is a case whereby you have used a different amount on debit and a different amount on credit, then expect your trial balance not to balance. Remember, for the compensating error, it is coincidental. It is something that happens without even the knowledge of the accountant. Therefore, it is something whose probability is very minimal to occur. So it is going to cause your trial balance not to balance as an accountant. Having noted that, then it is worth for me to explain something small on this, though I explained it. I said, the moment the trial balance fails to balance, the accountant does not have to check the errors immediately. The amount that has got an error or the amount that is making the two sides not to agree is normally recorded in the suspense account. It is actually a temporary account where the amount that is making the trial balance not to balance is normally recorded, awaiting investigation at a later date. And as I've said, it is normally at a later date because by the time the accountant is preparing the trial balance, it is at the end of the financial year. And at the end of the financial year, another transaction or other accounts need to be prepared. So it is kept pending, waiting for investigation. And then later on, the investigation is launched. And if you get all the errors that were made, then you find that the trial balance should balance at the end of the day, which we are going to do in this particular area. And I think that is actually the end. So that is actually the end of it. So today I thought, even though we have been disrupted by the connections, joining the class and all that, our intention was to do those errors. But it's like we are not going to be able to do it. Huh? But we also have, we always have next time. But as I end the class, I want to say this. In ledger accounts, if you open an account, you put a certain amount on the debit, and then you put another amount on the credit. Let me share this screen of mine. Like for example, we have this account for the bank. In a ledger account, if you have an amount that is recorded on the debit and you have an amount that is recorded on the credit, in accounting, that is subtraction. Like for example, there is this debit of 4 million. And then we have got these transactions that are on the opposite side, which is the credit side. It simply means that this 300,000, 800,000, that 5,050 and 50 up to that point, all these amounts are being subtracted from 4 million. So an amount that is on the debit and an amount that is on the credit, these two amounts is like we are subtracting. We can have another case like what? That one will not serve. Like what we have here. we had a debit of cash. We received cash worth 50,000 from the bank, and then we have these wages on the credit side. It simply means that we are subtracting 50,000 that we received minus 5,600 that we used to pay. So the balance for the cash at the end of that is going to be this. So which is simply 50 minus this. So as we are approaching this area of correcting the errors, it is worth noting errors are normally rectified by first understanding what was supposed to be done. Number two, then you do what was supposed to be. What I've said, number one, you understand what the accountant was supposed to do. Number two, you note what the accountant did. Then number three, you rectify the mistake the accountant did. So it is going to be very hard for you to correct the errors if first of all you don't understand how to record them in the ledger, you personally. It is actually a case whereby you are showing somebody the direction where you yourself, you don't know that direction. So the ledger accounts is such very important. The moment you have understand how to enter the transactions in the ledgers, and these are the rules, the assets, anytime they are increasing, you debit. Anytime they are reducing, you credit. Expenses, you always debit. The sales, you credit. Purchases, you debit. Sales returns, you debit. Purchases returns, you credit. Those are the tips. The moment you understand that, then you are going to be able to note the mistake the accountant made, and then you do what was supposed to be done. So that is the most important and crucial thing. Understand what the ledgers are all about. How do we enter the transaction? Then from there, we can be able to know the mistake. And the other thing is this: a debit and a credit simply means minusing. So you can find a case whereby a transaction was debited by mistake. If that account was debited by mistake, then your work is to minus that amount that was debited by mistake by crediting the same account. Like, for example, you can find a case whereby the money or paid electricity 1,000, but the money was recorded in wages account. So wages account was debited by mistake instead of debiting electricity. So you find this amount, because it was debited by mistake, we minus it by crediting wages and then debiting the correct account, which is electricity. So that is the work that we are going to do in our next class. Okay.
Mwalimu,
Yes, yes.
Mwalimu,
Yes,
could
yes.
you explain the tips again? Because I was wondering why we would have the cash.
Yes.
If you have cash, why you'd put it on the debit side?
Cash, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Can you come again, Faith, so that as I'm explaining, I explain the correct thing?
Okay. Okay, when we were doing the accounts,
Yes.
I saw we put the cash on the debit side. So I was wondering,
Yes.
if you have cash
Yes.
in the business, why that would be recorded in the debit side. Then number two, I wanted you to repeat the tips that you have given us. What goes on the debit, what goes on the credit side.
Okay, I think I've understood what you have asked. Let me answer you this way. Cash is an asset. It is actually what you have. It is your cash. And we know always anything that is yours or anything that is in asset form, they are always debited when you are increasing them. Like in this case here, there was money that was withdrawn from the bank to be used in the cash till. It simply means that you are transferring the money from your business bank account to your business cash box. So the business is receiving that money from the bank, and therefore the cash account being an asset and we are receiving, meaning that it is increasing, it is supposed to be debited. And where the money is coming from, we should credit. We should credit that account. Like in this case, if we are receiving money from the bank, it simply means the money that is in the bank is reducing, so we credit to the bank, and then we debit the receiving, which is actually the cash. So cash, anytime is being received, it is always debited. And anytime we pay something using cash, cash account is credited. I don't know whether I've answered you correctly.
I thought it would, I always thought it would be the opposite. So that's why I'm confused.
No.
Thought
Cash,
when you're getting more money,
yes.
then you credit.
Cash. No. When you are paying using cash,
okay.
that is when you credit cash. But when you are receiving cash, you debit cash account.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, that is how
All
it's
right.
supposed to be. The same case to bank. Anytime you receive money in your bank, you debit bank account. Anytime you are paying money by check, you credit the bank account. It's supposed to be like that.
Okay. Then the tips.
The tips is this. Anytime the asset is increasing, is increasing, you debit that account. In short, anytime an asset is receiving something, like for example, furniture, they are being increased, cash is being received, cash at bank is being received through the check. We are selling goods by credit, so we are increasing the debtors. Anytime the assets are increasing, you debit. And anytime they are decreasing, you credit. Like for example, you spend cash to pay the expenses, you spend money in the bank through checks to pay some expenses, you credit those assets that are affected. So increase in cash, debit, decrease, credit. The other is liabilities. Increase in liabilities, you credit. Increase in liabilities, you credit. Decrease, you debit. Decrease, you debit. The same case applies to capital. Increase, you credit. Decrease, you debit. Then we have what we call expenses. Expenses, they are debited. Anytime they are being paid, we normally debit the expense account. And here, we don't open an account by the name expense. We open an account by the name. Remember, expense is a general term. We open a specific account, like electricity account, wages account, repairs account, stationaries account. So you open an individual expense account anytime the expenses are incurred. So you debit the expenses account. And then credit revenue accounts. You credit revenue accounts. Revenues are actually the sources of income. Anytime money is coming in, debit those sources of income. And a good example, actually, one of the revenues is the sales. That's why sales is always credited, because it is a revenue account. We also have other revenues like the discount received and the commission received, all that. I think those are the tips. Those are the tips. Karibu.
Limo, if it's possible to have that in writing somewhere, we can refer to it so that we remember.
I think they are. It is actually captured somewhere in your notes. In your previous notes, the double entry bookkeeping notes. They are there. They are there. They are there. Just refer it. You find them. Specifically where we wrote the trial balance, that notes that has got the format of the trial balance and all that, those notes are there.
Thank you.
Karibu. Anybody with another question?
Olimu, there's a question.
Olimu.
Yes.
Sorry.
Agnes?
Yeah, there was this task that we're doing last week. We go to the expenses and we were to do the drawings. You told us to do them on our own. I think if we can get time,
yes,
then probably we can look through the drawings as well.
The question that I gave last week?
We go to expenses.
Yes.
We were left drawings.
The drawings, huh?
Yes.
Okay, we can have a look at that. What do you have normally on Wednesdays?
Leadership, leadership. Different classes.
Wednesday you are occupied, eh?
Yeah.
What about Friday?
Same.
Yes.
You are
we
also
have a class.
So you have a class the whole week?
Yeah, we have different classes.
Okay. I thought maybe there is a day in between the week where you can be free and I'm also free. We can do it one. I actually know, and I said this from the word go, that if you understand the ledgers, then you have understood accounting. The other accounts or the accounting statements are going to be actually a walk in the park. I think, I don't know how we are going to do it because time is running, but we also need to understand.
Mwalimu, maybe if people can sacrifice, we start early next week.
Yeah, especially if you have got issues on those ledger accounts. If you have got issues to do with the ledger accounts, you have not understood this concept, we can agree. We start 1 hour early so that by the time 6 is coming, so that we can be able to do what is meant for that particular week. We can.
Mwalimu, can we do 1 hour after? Because some of us are coming from work.
Yes.
An hour early might be tricky.
We do 1 hour after.
Or 30 minutes after, yes.
And then the best thing, you know, now the trick about it,
We
I understand your concern, but the trick about it, you know, I'm supposed to make you understand the ledgers so that I can start on the errors. So if we do it after, then it simply means I start with the ledgers. I start with the ledgers, I delay the errors, and then we finish with the errors. Because I cannot start the errors, then I bring you back to the ledgers.
Can we start at 5:30?
Yeah, we can sacrifice. I think it's a sacrifice that we need to make.
It's a one-off.
Yes, you sacrifice 5:30. If we can agree, all of us, that we start 5:30 so that we can move to around 6:30, doing that revision. And then at 6:30, we start on the errors. And then maybe we can push it a bit also to around 8:15 there, so that actually, I understand your point. There is no need of hurrying and then you don't understand. And at the same time, we need to cover the syllabus within the scheduled time. So both are important. So let us agree, next week on Monday, we start our class at 5:30, and we are going to start with looking at revisiting the ledgers. We revisit the ledgers, and then we connect with the errors. Actually, if you look at the syllabus for the CHRP, you'll find that these two are not, the syllabus is not organized in the way that they are supposed to follow. But I know anytime I teach this unit, I must immediately after the ledger accounts, I connect with the errors, because the errors are about the ledger accounts. It does not make sense I leave it and then we go up to week 10. That's why I start reminding you, do you remember how to credit and debit? It creates additional work of reminding you. So I better spend some time here, and then we pick it and go direct to the errors, and then your understanding will be boosted by that. So next week, we start our lesson at 5:30, and we are going to start maybe probably by looking at another question for the ledger accounts. I'm going to prepare a question that is going to cut across. It's going to cover assets, liabilities, it's going to cover about revenues, expenses, those drawings, the returns. It cuts across so that I can be able to explain those points as we do that question. And I'm so sure it's going to assist those who have not grasped the points.
Mwalimu, on the question we tackled on Hadija Enterprises,
yes,
was it deliberate that you went all the way to the trial balance? Because
it was actually deliberate. It was deliberate.
Okay.
Your work was only to end. If it was the examination point, your work was only to end at posting the account, the ledger account.
Okay.
You are not supposed to go all through. Yeah. So I want to end the class at that point, and also still apologize for the hiccups that we experienced today. But I think it was, I think I said the reason. The reason was because I used a link for another unit. We normally share the same account for the CHRM. And I am also reminded there is that topic 4. The topic 4, quite a number of you have not attempted the quiz. I think it's only Sharon that attempt, and even the last week's, the discussion question. Can you go there and comment on the same? For topic 4, the topic 4, the quiz, actually you are supposed to attempt it by Saturday, 8. and it has the timeline. So I extended it a bit intentionally because I knew I had not communicated the same, or I had not reminded you. I extended it to Thursday this week. There are only, I think, eight questions only, and they have got the multiple choice. It's a matter of going there and you put your input. By Thursday at around 8 p.m., it is going to rock itself, so you cannot be able to access that quiz. So I want to urge you, go there, have a look at those, and then you attempt. And with the good thing about the quiz, you attempt, you submit, it gives you the results immediately. For topic 4, and then for topic 5, there was a discussion forum where also majority of you did not participate in giving your input as far as those particular ideas or questions are concerned. So please, it is actually healthy for you, also for your revision, and also it adds value to your internal assessment. At the end of the day, maybe the cut plus that is going to add up, and then we add the exam. So it is not something that we normally do it for the sake. And I also want to communicate that it is good for you to do that discussion before we start. Actually, I said for your case, you do it by Saturday 8, so that I am free on Sunday. I can look at what you have put there and then comment on Sunday as we begin another week on Monday. And you find that if maybe you are commenting now for topic 3, I might not have an opportunity to go back to topic 3 to review your input. But if we go systematically, we are in chapter 6 or topic 6, you give your input for topic 6 this week, and then I review it on Sunday. We start another one on Monday. It's going to be healthy. Otherwise, with those communications and the time that I indicated here, I think it is good enough for us to end the class at that particular point, unless somebody else has a burning issue or a question or a clarification. Okay. Thank you very much for joining and being patient. Let us meet again next week on Monday at 5:30 as we have agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a blessed night and a fruitful week ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You too.